even though it's been slow, there's been a lot of loud voices in the UFO world recently, man.
Yeah, and loud's not always good. So the first topic, and you know, I'll be honest with you, like I don't really want to talk about this one. I just, to me, this is just, I'll try to see the brighter side of this. But what I'm talking about is this whole kerfuffle going on about what Elizondo said in his interview, where he brought up this 5-year-old NSA document and basically implied to the audience that it was a new document. And unfortunately, he was just using that document as an example of essentially how you know, everything that's been going on seems to be making it easier for the government to release things. So he was using it as an example of that. Unfortunately, he got the story from the Sun, and if you're not familiar with the Sun isn't always the most accurate periodical available. And so they had basically respun up an article that was a couple years old and served it up as new, which is unfortunately very typical for periodicals like that to do. It's something you always have to be careful of. And essentially Elizondo just got caught, right? I mean, he just basically didn't dig deep enough, because he wasn't really talking about that article. He was just using it as an example. He got caught. He came forward and said, I got caught, you know, I didn't know, sorry, you know, like I thought I could trust the data. I was wrong, you know, no big deal. And you know, to me, that should just be the end of it. And unfortunately, it's just been kind of, you know, in this echo chamber, and there's been people been using it as a vehicle for you know, going after each other and placing blame on people and explaining and excusing behavior and all this stuff. And it's just, you know what, it's a bummer, you know, it's just a bummer. That being said, I really like how Elizondo handled himself. I really liked a lot of what Thomas Fessler said on his show about it. You know, I mean, there've been some, you know, there's been some people saying some, you know, well thought out, pragmatic stuff that I think is good. And I think, you know, every time there are one of these explosions of emotion within this community, or any community that you're a part of, you know, it's really hard not to see it as somehow, you know, your community being wounded at some level. And it's hard, but, you know, if you can somehow reframe it in your mind as an opportunity to try out your new tools, as an opportunity to show how much you've changed and how much better you've become, then you can actually, you know, take this and eventually spin it to something positive. But at the moment, it's just blah.
You know, the one thing about it was that I noticed Elizondo came out right away when he realized his mistake and he admitted to his mistake. I mean, what more? Okay, I'm going to put it this way. I still believe that Luis Elizondo needs to be asked some very difficult questions. And you and I agree to disagree on that. And that's quite okay.
No, they can be asked. I'm not sure I don't feel the same need for them to be answered, but I understand the need for them to be asked.
Okay, but the idea is this. I mean, the guy is already very, you know, people treat him in a conspiratorial way because of his history and everything. But when someone makes a mistake and then they own up to the mistake, you got to be able to let it go and move on. You have to.
For no other reason, forget him for a second. If for no other reason, showing to everyone else that that's the right way to do things, and that you will be rewarded for doing it that way, and that we will all let it go and move on, right? I mean, even if you don't care about that one individual, think about what the message is to all the others around you.
Mm-hmm. No, I understand that. I understand and appreciate that very much so, you know, but I mean, look, he's always going to have the counterintelligence part hovering over his head. All right. And the fact that, you know, we don't know fully what he did in his previous career. And when it comes to UFOs, I think in the long run, to play at devil's advocate here, all right, people, when it comes to people like Elizondo or Chris Mellon, or even going back to Rick Doty, people are disingenuous about their ideas of what they are bringing to the field. They don't trust it, and there's a large conglomerate that is like that. UFO Twitter is not so much like that. And if you ask any questions about Elizondo, they attack you. Okay.
Sometimes, yeah.
It does happen. I've had it happen to myself.
It happens a lot. It's not consistent, but it happens a lot. Yeah.
So I can see where there is a melting pot, because Lou does say a lot without giving out much. He does leave it to our own discretions. He has said on this show, as well as others, that he asks people to read between the lines of what he is saying to find the
truth of the matter is it in general in your life, the last person you ever want to be depending on as your primary information source is someone who has held a clearance. Like, they're always going to have a limited ability to share information with you, no matter who they are or what they held. It's always going to have a valve on it. So relying on that one person to give you that information, it leaves you perpetually frustrated.
Yeah. And look, I will say this. I am on Team Elizondo, as I do believe he needs to answer some tough questions. I am on Team Elizondo. I never used to be. Okay. But talking to the man privately and having conversation and then interviewing him a couple of times changed my thoughts on what he is about and what he is doing for ufology. I mean, the problem that I have is there's a big difference between disclosure and disclosure. We're not going to get a full disclosure. We're going to get a limited one. And I think that is the major concern that we should have with all of this, rather than, a confirmation type of disclosure where we're not going to get barely anything.
Yeah. No, I mean, no, you're totally right. And I think it's hard, because I think that for so many people, they want aspects of disclosure that are going to change other people's behavior. And disclosure should be more about how it changes your own perception of your world, and how it changes your perception of your reality, and how you feel that you should be interacting with others. It's not about triggering other people to behave better, or encouraging other people. It does not. You're not going to get other people to change the way they are just because of anything going on. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people want to see change as a result of disclosure. They want disclosure to happen, and then they want like other things to be triggered in society because of that. And I think that's where people get their hopes up, and they get very emotional, and they get very charged.
There is also, John, a very large difference between your disclosure, my disclosure, and everyone else's disclosure. To me, disclosure has everything from ancient aliens right through to what happened at Roswell. Do we have bodies? Okay. Are there craft at Area 51? That's what we need to know. All right. Other people's disclosure is, let's find out what these craft are so we can maybe use their technology, okay, to better humanity right now. Other people's disclosure is, what do the aliens want with me? Why are they taking me on a nightly basis? There is a number of different points to disclosure that haven't even been discussed. And yet when we talk about it, whether it's Stephen Greer's version or Steve Bassett's version or Lou Elizondo's version or whomever, there are so many different sides to disclosure here. We don't even know what we're arguing anymore. We really don't.
Well, yeah, and I agree with you. And I think that if you look at the people, if I've looked at the people who I know in this community, and if I look to myself, it's those of us that have taken all this and used it as an inward looking tool. In my opinion, tend to be happier. put slightly, put mildly. It's, I mean, I've personally already gained so much from what's been disclosed so far, and there's no rhyme or reason. There's no reason to say that one person's version of disclosure is right or another person's is wrong. And so I think it should be personal. I think it should be individual. I think disclosure should be, because each person does have a different qualification for it, and they're in the right to do so.
Okay, but it still doesn't choose the fact that, UFO Twitter and the UFO world really is like a war zone right now.
Yeah, in many cases it is. Well, look. I mean, all chaotic social structures perform worse in a vacuum because they self-publish in the vacuum, and that's not what you want. You want new data coming in, and so whenever there's a limited amount of data coming in, everyone it goes nuts, and that's what's going on. And so hopefully we'll get more data soon, but data is what solves this. Give people data to chew on. Give them their gladiators. Let them cheer and keep them distracted. But this is good stuff. This is actually proper stuff because the data actually does help us. It's not just for entertainment.
No, absolutely. But I mean, the fight along Lou. I mean, this guy can, if he were to take a pee in the wrong place, yes, I mean, he would be absolutely scorned.
Yes. And thank you, because there was another point I wanted to make, and that was that many of us, and I'm happy to say I don't think I've done this in a while, but I know I've done this myself. And a lot of us, what we do is we collect enough data over a period of time that we've decided to fail someone. We don't like them anymore for some reason, but we don't have enough data yet to convince everyone else, and so we sit and we wait. And we wait and we look for data. And every time something comes out that we think we can use to strengthen our case for why this person is bad, we grab it and we go, yay, look, he's bad. And you keep piling it on and piling it on, piling it on, piling it on. And I think it's really, it's not a good quality in a human.
No, it's not. And but the idea is, though, for people who have questions about Luis Elizondo, they need to, their questions are perfectly right. And I'm not defending any type of videos or documentaries that are done on Lou. Okay. But I've talked to some major people in this field who really do not understand what Elizondo is trying to get at. Okay, and these are big people in the field that won't talk about this on a public level, and yet, I mean, when you have people questioning that and questioning what does he bring to the Galileo project, to what does he bring to the subject in general, I think Lou is trying to do as much as he can right now, and get his voice out there and his opinion out there, but at times I think that we're shaking him a little bit too hard, because if he disappears, John, if he goes away, which he could any day, he could just say, I've had enough. That's it. I'll work on this from behind the scenes. I don't need this public ridicule anymore. Then we lose a major source to the inside. And I could see Lou Elizondo one day just saying, screw it. I've had enough. I've had it. That's it. I'm walking away.
I would laugh. So that would be so awesome. I would love to see that. I would love that. It would be so perfect. That would be so perfect. That would be the perfect ending to all of this. Because it's ridiculous how he's treated. I mean, you're right. Look, ask questions. Ask every question. Ask uncomfortable questions. Do them respectfully. Do it in the right place. But ask. But don't be mean.
John, we're going to get right to it here, honestly, because my head is killing me, and I am not feeling well. I haven't been feeling well the last couple of days, so I do apologize to everyone for everything here. But you know what? We're just gonna roll with it. We're gonna roll with it right now. We were talking Lou Elizondo, and You know, one of the things that I think about Lou, and let's face it, he is a polarizing character within the UFO community. He calls his own shots, goes on the shows that he wants and where he feels comfortable. Others he is dismissed. Others he goes on sparingly. I would say we're one of those sparingly type of shows. And you know, he is someone who chooses his words wisely. He chooses what he says wisely, and sometimes he lets out a few Easter eggs. Sometimes he gives out a number of little tidbits of information, you know. But you made a good point when we were talking off the break here about the idea that, you know, he is someone who, you know, could walk away and never be heard from again. Then what do? We're stuck with Nick Pope, for God's sakes. All right. And I mean, who the hell is Nick Pope going to copy if Lou Elizondo goes away? I mean, it's one of those things, John, where I think in the UFO world, we really have to be careful what we wish for, because
we've seen examples, right? We've seen minor examples.
For years, we have wanted somebody like Luis Elizondo to come out of the Pentagon and tell us that this subject was real, that they know about it, that they have been studying it. Okay, now granted, I don't buy the BS story that, oh, this is a new phenomena that we don't know where it's coming from. We don't no, I don't buy that whatsoever. I don't. 70 years of history says different. Okay, but we do need Lou Elizondo in this field, and the continual attacks about him, which I do not agree with. Okay, don't attack the person, attack the message. The message is different from the person, you know, and I'm a big believer in that, John. Big believer.
No, I agree, but I think there's a lot of people who have come to an internal decision that Lou is bad, and therefore they're always looking for evidence to support that hypothesis. There are other people that feel that Lou is always good and looking for evidence. There are other people that try really hard to weigh him on a weekly basis based on what he's doing. And I mean, there's also in-betweens, and it's just how it goes.
Very true. Very true. And he's going to subject that. But if Lou Elizondo, as of tomorrow, said, I'm done with the UFO field, I'm gone. Screw you guys, I'm going home, pulling a Cartman. All right. I mean, what do we do? What do we do?
We sit and we ponder. And
then we turn. Behavior. Then we're going to eat our own. That's what we're going to do. Then we're stuck with, you know, nothing against these people, but now we're stuck back with the Linda Moulton Howes, the Steve Bassetts, the Daniel Sheehan's, the Grant Camerons, Richard Dolans of the world.
Yep.
We're trying to conjure up and resurrect, you know, Jim Mars and Stanton Friedman on Ouija boards to see what they have on the other side that they could give us. There's a lot. There's a lot that we are going to end up
mediums. That'd be a messy thing.
But this is exactly it. I mean, look, whether we don't know if Lou Elizondo is a misinformation agent or not. We don't know. What we can say is this. Lou Elizondo is pretty much one of the pieces that is directly responsible for bringing this subject into the mainstream limelight. We have to give him credit for that. We also need to be able to identify the fact that he has, after leaving the To the Stars Academy, been much more open than we could ever expect on podcasts, radio shows, television shows, and everything in between. All right. You have to give him credit for that. Has he answered a lot of tough questions? What are tough questions? Okay. Asking him about his business life, I don't think pertains to what the TT or to what UFOs are all about. I don't see the correlation. I don't see the correlation of bringing his family into it. I don't see the correlation of needing to know that. If I'm a journalist and I'm which I am, and if I'm looking at all the notes and information I've gathered about Luis Elizondo, where he's invested his money is not as important to me as what he knows about Roswell.
Well, it's an age-old logical fallacy. You're attacking the character. You're trying to attack the character of someone because you're having trouble attacking their argument. It's very human. It's just not pretty.
No, it's not very pretty at all. And I think that's where we see a lot of the mess today that's going on. I mean,
yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, look, I mean, you take Susan Go, the speaker for the Pentagon. I mean, there is someone who has blatantly lied about Elizondo to the public. Whereas, you know, back when he was alive, Harry Reid, Chris Mellon, and very many other people said this is Lou's job. If Lou was a liar about what he knew about this subject, he would not be briefing other senators, Congress people, and other agencies about this subject of UAP.
Nope. And the fact that all that was going on while she was actually saying what she was saying was, you know what it reminded me of? Honestly, I almost did a picture about it. It reminded me of when the last time the U.S. was invading Iraq, and there was that Iraqi Minister of Information. They kept getting on TV and talking about how the Americans were fleeing and how like they were being run out of Baghdad, and he was literally saying this as American tanks were rolling into, like, I mean, he was basically just lying flat out, like, but in a very positive, rosy way that was being very helpful to keep people calm, right? And it was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. And this totally reminded me of it. It was like it just blows my mind.
Okay, let's get to a comment here from Mystic's Walk. This is the other side of the ledger. Lou is of no real use to us. In my opinion, he's never going to tell a single thing that we want to know. He is a disinformation man. It goes back to the old saying, why are you going to ask a liar a question? Now, John, I'll let you go on this, and then I'll answer that.
So, okay, so I understand some of the logic. My challenge is that there is a lot of different types of people that work in this field, and a spook is not a spook. It's not a spook, and counterintelligence is a very specific skill set, and it's a very useful thing, and it's a very helpful thing, and it's a really critical thing, and they aren't like, it's totally different than like what you know, what field, like what you know, what Jim Semivan was doing, or like anyone doing like that kind of work, like that's a whole different ball game, right? And so the fact that people slap Lou into the same group as people who, you know, I don't know, just it bothers me. It bothers me because counterintelligence, it's so important. It's so important.
Okay, but at some point, the fact that he is counterintelligence is one of the things that we also have to look at, to the idea, John, that when it comes to UFOs, we have to be able to understand that's different from what he was doing. Sure, he may have
the analogy.
Pardon me?
It'd be like I just thought of the analogy. It'd be like hiring a fireman and then being worried that he was into arson.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now,
it's a totally different thing. But that's the analogy.
My opinion of what Mystics walk, and I think Mystics has a lot of good points. I don't think, though, where I'll disagree, I don't think he's been a disinformation agent. I think he has been a very controlled information man. He has only given us what he feels that we want to hear. Okay. And I don't think he has given us the golden nuggets. I agree with Mystic's Walk on that. I don't think that he has given us the goods that we feel are necessary for people who have been maybe directly or indirectly subjected to this subject. Look, the majority of people out there, John, and I'm not saying the lights twinkling in the sky, the majority of people out there who have had any sort of experience already have their disclosure. They already know the phenomena is real. I mean, this is stuff that Gary Nolan is looking into, and why people are even attacking Gary Nolan these days when he is probably, you know, the second coming of his hero and mentor, Jacques Vallée, is absolutely incredulous. It really is.
They got to get those attacks in now, you know, before he gets too popular.
Right. Right. But the idea that I'm saying here, though, is this. Elizondo, due to his NDAs, can only say so much. I think Elizondo, if he had his choice, though, still would not tell us about what happened at Roswell, what happened at Kecksburg, what's hiding at Area 51, what's happening or
You
hiding.
think if he had that information and he was completely cleared to share it with you, that he would personally choose to withhold it?
I think that he would edit it. I would. I probably would too. Okay. Think about it. Think about it, John. If you look at everything that's going on, that's a lot of pressure on your shoulders to be the man who changes the world.
Yeah, which is exactly why you don't want to mess with it, and you just want to dump it as it is, because you don't have any right to for the exact reasons you just said. Right?
If like, you know, if Elizondo was given the green light to mention everything that he knew, where would the world be? Where would the economy be?
We don't know yet. That's
where would humanity be? Well, I mean, we do know that this is part of the fears that have been studied the last number of years regarding this, including the study a few years ago by the Vatican regarding, or by NASA regarding, you know, where they brought in all the Christian scholars to discuss this matter.
I know.
Okay, this subject goes very, very deep that we don't give enough credit for. It's not about a craft that can travel at past light speed or close to it, right? This is going far beyond, right? Lumpy here says, I feel sorry for him in respect he's aware of his security oaths and clearances and cannot just tell anyone information he's privy to. Security doesn't facilitate that unless you want to go to prison. Right? So, I mean, look, not everybody is going to agree.
It's like you're totally, and that's the thing that's so hard is that, you know, I mean, because the thing is that for anyone, there's stuff that you know that you cannot even, like, if that comes up in the room, you have to leave. There's stuff that you know that if that comes up in the conversation, you can't add anything. You can just listen. There's stuff that you know that comes up in the conversation where you might be able to give personal opinions, but nothing else. And there's like, so you know what all those things are, right? I mean, it's not left up to like off the cuff judgment, right? Like that's all locked down. Like you don't want people like willy-nilly deciding that stuff in the field. Like that's all very well laid out for folks.
Well, I mean, John, here's the other thing too we have to realize. Elizondo isn't there for ufology. He's a part of it. He's the face of it. But his job has been throughout this entire last 4 years, his job has been to introduce the subject to the public that wasn't paying attention. His job hasn't been to be the voice of ufology the way we know it, the way Stanton Friedman was, or Richard Dolan is, or people like that. That hasn't been his job. Has he mended a fence between the two? Absolutely. One thing Lou Elizondo did state regarding everything was that he didn't agree with the Stars Academy is that they had this entire support system called ufology that they pretty much kicked to the curb because they wanted to be better than them. Okay. And that was all the single rights of one person who can't figure out what band he wants to front. All right. They ignored ufology, their biggest supporters, their biggest everything, and they blew the opportunity. They blew it. And now Elizondo, I think, has done a good job at mending a lot of those fences. You know, there's still some people that are butthurt, and they will continue to go the way that they want. But it doesn't hide the fact that in the end, Elizondo has introduced more people to this subject than any ufologist from Jacques Vallée on down in the last 50 years. And that's the truth.
Yeah, that is true. Yep, absolutely.
Right? Right? And that's what we need to remember. All right, let's move on to another subject here. Let's move on. All right. What's coming April 21st?
So there is supposed to be, well, I mean, basically, you know, what I wanted to cover was, you know, basically was this whole Elizondo issue. And then some of the other challenges that are coming up is okay, so let me go backwards then. and answer your question. So what that is that is not actually something that's coming up on 21st. That is something that is finally a detailed report that was published on the sighting that was on April 21st, or in April of 2021. And so this was that double A sighting that we all talked about last year. And this was basically a nice article that came out that basically went into detail, like all the different data that came out for it, who added to the reporting, who was interested in the data. And unfortunately did not actually get down to any sort of conclusions, which I can't say I'm terribly surprised by, but I guess I was a little bit disappointed in. And but the thing was that I was really impressed that someone actually went back and followed up on a sighting. I mean, I guess what I'm excited about is this is how normal news works, right? Like someone reports something, and then at some point in the future, someone else follows up on it and like goes, you know what I'm saying? And now UFOs are being treated that way, and I think that's really kind of cool.
Okay, so how is this going to affect what we do?
Well, I think ultimately what it should be doing is it should be bringing people some faith and some comfort that essentially things are changing and things are opening up and things are freeing up. And now if you do report something through AA, or you do report something through the FAA, or you do report something through a news agency, that there's a chance that they might actually look into it and they might actually take it seriously, and that you're not going to get laughed at like you used to. That's a big deal.
That is a big deal. That is a big deal. And Nicole Sackich brings up a good point in our chat room, and we love it when Nicole makes some points here. The President Obama Presidential Library FOIA requests have just started getting responses about what could happen there with some UFO stuff too.
Oh, that could be fun.
That's going to be very interesting to watch.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No. And the thing is, that's the other thing I wanted to talk about is that we are so early in this, right? And one of the interesting things that just came out was analysis that was done of all the QAnon writing through a machine learning language to determine who the actual authors were, right? And what I loved about this article is it tiptoed right on to what you and I talked about another night, where essentially in the future, we're going to be able to take all of the correspondence between all the UFO researchers, all the papers that have been written, all the books that have been written, and we're going to be able to actually dump that all into an algorithm, and we're going to be able to start creating matches for style synchronicities, tone, word usage, and we're going to start actually figuring out tighter relationships, maybe even people that were writing as other people and so forth, who actually wrote things, who the actual authors were of things, and all this stuff we are going to get in the future. We're not there yet. And there's a lot more really, really exciting stuff to come.
There really, really is. Okay, we only got about 2 minutes left here. And let's go to this one. July 1947, Winnipeg Free Press, hypothesis number 3.
Yeah, this is cool. So first off, nod to Dan, and there'll be a link to his TikTok, and this is a good one. This is a fun one, and he covers up a lot of other good points. But the nut of it, and the part that I wanted to touch on, is the fact that what he found was an article from 1947 from the Winnipeg, and basically it's a Roswell article, right? Turns out that there was more than one Roswell article. But what was super cool was the guy that wrote this one, who, as a side note, also went on to write a UFO book. When he was writing out like the different sightings in different places and different evidence, he put forward the 3 hypotheses that he felt were the strongest. And they were the exact same hypotheses we're dealing with now. They're ours, and we don't know it. They're aliens, or they're interdimensional. And so this was an author in a public paper in 1947 suggesting that interdimensional is just as valid of a solution as anything else. Wow. It's not new.
Wow. I mean, you think that came out in a little piddly Winnipeg newspaper.
Yep.
You know, good old Canada striking there, thinking for the future 50 years ahead.
Not bad.
Look at that. Not bad at all, man. Not bad at all. I'm actually kind of impressed by that. Yeah, where's Grant Cameron when you need him to speak about that?
I know.
Sackich,
good on Dan for finding it. Yeah, good on Dan for finding it.
And you know what? We should give a shout out to Dan Warren, because I mean, the hard work that he is doing on his Twitter or his TikTok account and bringing these stories to the fold are really,
he's actually doing his own unique research, which is awesome.
He is,
and I love it. I applaud him for it. I think it's awesome.
Absolutely. John, thank you for an elongated UFO report tonight. Really appreciate it, buddy.